Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Vajra, with a V. It usually comes back over the phone to me as Roger. Vajra with a V, and then I spell it. It's our joy to be with you today. Thank you for joining us. Well, Swami talks about this subject, knowing God, seeing God, in a number of books: The Promise of Immortality, Rays of the Same Light, Rays of the One Light, and in the affirmations that Jim just read for us now, variously as Can God Be Known? How to See God, and the Bhagavad Gita part, Visualizing Infinity, Can Man See God? And lastly, Contentment. Now, what does contentment have to do with seeing God? Well, as it says in the reading, we must smile inwardly with God, knowing that life is His dream. If we're not content, there's no way to know God, because you don't have the right consciousness. Your energy, your thoughts are being pulled this way and that. So it's as though contentment were a prerequisite for knowing God, for seeing God. And I have a story about knowing, appropriate for the occasion, perhaps. It has to do with knowing about the rain. Now, I know that in this last week we've had a fair amount of rain here in Portland. And I know that they tend to get more rain up in Seattle. Now, the reason that Seattle's been on my mind, there's a couple of reasons that Seattle's been on my mind. One is that we will be doing an oratorio presentation, joining the Seattle choir in just a matter of weeks, so we'll be going up there for that. And the other is that, excuse me, this is my wife, Pavani. Preoccupied. Pavani and I got back from a trip to Seattle. We went to Vashon Island, which we'd never heard of. Rose recommended it to us. Thank you, Rose. It was lovely. You have to take the ferry across the water to get there, and there's something about crossing the water, getting off the mainland, that gives you a psychic disconnect that we were very much in need of from the daily routine. So we were delighted to be there, and we took the ferry back across to do a little sightseeing on the mainland, and the weather was very cooperative. Well, the weather in Seattle is not always so cooperative. Seattle is known for its rain. That brings me to my story of a man who went to Seattle on business, hoping, as we had, to do a little sightseeing along the way, but it rained. It rained every day. It rained the entire time that he was there. On his very last day, he found himself at one of those enclosed bus stops, and it was pouring down. Standing next to him was a mother with her young child, and in exasperation, he turned to the boy and he said, "Tell me, son, does it ever stop raining here in Seattle?" And the boy looked up at him with innocent eyes and said, "How would I know? I'm only 5 years old." My apologies to Bimal and anyone else who... So, knowing God. Can we know God? Is it possible to know God? Well, I had a very interesting conversation with our dental hygienist on this subject. And it's almost an oxymoron to say having a conversation with your dental hygienist, because there you are, huh? And she's asking you, "So, what have you and your wife been up to lately?" But somehow I managed to convey to her something about Ananda and our work with Ananda and being ministers and yogis. And she got to talking. She's a young girl, very professional and very sweet and very talkative. And she shared with me what her deepest aspiration was, which was to be face to face with Jesus. And I thought about that, and I thought, wow. And I could see her sincerity and what it meant to her. And I just thought, you know, I wouldn't know what to say. I'm sure she would. She seemed to have the gift. But if I were face to face with Jesus, it would be, so, how's it going? How's your mom? Did you have a nice Christmas? Anyway, Satchidananda said, truth is one, paths are many. And what was notable was she was and is seeking the exact same thing that I'm seeking, the same thing that we're all seeking. Swami Kriyananda in his later years kept coming back to this. Just seeing people would bring him to tears because he would recognize the soul in each individual that he saw, and he knew that they want the same thing that I want. And that was so moving to him that, as I say, it would bring him to tears. We all share that, whether we realize it or not. We're all the same in that way. Can we get there is the question. How do we get there? Well, the answer we see is no way, and yes, of course. No way can we get there as man. As it says, it's not man, the human body, these human eyes that sees God. God can be seen only with spiritual vision, with the eye of the soul. Master puts it, I cognize the center of the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. Isn't that just exactly what you've always thought? These words from someone who on the boat coming over here could speak quite literally barely a word of English. And yet this is what he is able to channel. Talk about a state of consciousness. Swami tells us of meditations that he was at with Master, the Christmas meditations, the all-day meditations, where he would tap into Divine Mother's consciousness and he would converse with her. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was him saying aloud to Divine Mother, but aloud so they could all hear it, so that's how you do it. Now, wouldn't you pay full admission to be in on that conversation? That's how you do it. Of course, you have to be in that consciousness. And how do you get to that consciousness? Well, one example of how you get to that consciousness was provided to us by Swami when he was studying in college and having a difficult time paying attention to the routine of doing the studies, and he came upon his final exam in Greek, and he'd hardly cracked the book. And he picked up the book and looked at it, and it just, it was all Greek to him, as you might think. But he had the exam right. And then it occurred to him, what if I were a Greek? So he just put his attention and told himself, I'm a Greek. I'm a Greek. He took on the consciousness of being a Greek. And when he opened the book, it all made sense to him. It was easy. It was a flow. And it all came together for him. He passed the exam without difficulty. He was one of the few who did, actually. So it's adopting that consciousness. I do the same thing in the community, only I think I'm a plumber. A little less elevated, possibly. Nevertheless, I notice that when I do that, it does, in fact, shift everything. It shifts the reality in front of me. It becomes not a question of, I wonder whether I can manage this. What if this goes wrong? What if that happens? It becomes, okay, here it is. How are we going to do this? We do this, we do that. Whether you're going to succeed or not is it's not even there. It's a foregone conclusion because the plumber knows he's going to solve it. He knows he's going to fix it. So adopting that consciousness. And it's the same with God realization. We want to adopt the consciousness of those who are already there, those who can say, I've been there, I've done that. We want to get ourselves in tune with that kind of energy, that kind of thinking, that kind of awareness. That's why it says in John, as is read here again, the only begotten Son which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. It is the Christ-like guru or Savior who declares the Father by transmitting his awareness of God to those who are attuned to his consciousness. It's the guru. That's the way the universe is set up. Do you need a guru? Swami's had a number of interviews. I remember the first one was with a magazine in Santa Rosa, the first one I was aware of. And the interviewer was, of course, that this was years ago, and it was a fairly hot topic at the time. Do you need a guru? And to probably everyone's surprise, Swami said, no, you don't need a guru. Just do your spiritual practices, and you'll be fine. But if you come to the point that you realize that you can't get there on your own, then you need a guru. And that's the state that we all come to. It's theoretically possible for some to find their realization on a desert island of that, although even there it's not at all clear that they didn't somewhere in the picture have a guru, have that connection, have that link. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly why it's set up that way, but when you look at it, you see over and over again, this line of masters, every one of them was self-realized, God realized. They didn't need to come here. They came here as a mission. They didn't have anything to need. You would think they didn't need to have a guru. And yet each one of them had a guru. Everything that Swami does points us to Master. Yogananda is our guru. Yogananda's guru was Lahiri Mahashai. He came into this life and he had blinders on, didn't even know who he was until, well, excuse me, jumping. Yogananda's guru was Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar's guru was Lahiri Mahashai, who didn't know that he was a realized master until Babaji told him, revealed it to him, that he was there. Now, who was Babaji's guru? Well, we haven't been given his history, but we know that he was Krishna in a previous incarnation. And I looked it up. Krishna had a guru. Samdipani Muni was Krishna's guru. And he went through the same process. When we attune ourselves to the guru, that opens that link, that opens that connection. It's the way to know God. Jesus, he went to John the Baptist. Now, Jesus was of a higher spiritual stature than John the Baptist. He had actually, in the previous incarnation, when they were Elijah and Elisha, he had taken a double portion of his spirituality and actually surpassed his guru, which is why John said to him, you should be baptizing me in all humility. He recognized that. And Christ said, no, suffer it to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fill all righteousness. This is the way it's done. You are my guru always. And so in all humility, even that fully realized avatar bowed to his guru. Can you trust the guru? Well, that's something that comes up because in this day and age, there's lots of people out there who make lots of claims for themselves. And it's not really a simple, easy answer. It's something you have to discover. It's something you have to realize. It's something you have to understand. Some things that help, by their fruits, you know them. You look around at what they do. You listen to what they say. Are they speaking from ego? or are they speaking the truth? When you read the autobiography of a yogi, this is what happened to me. I had listened to a lot of different spiritual teachers, but when I read the autobiography, it was crystal clear to me. I knew this man was speaking the truth, and I could not see even the tiniest bit of ego in what I was hearing. And then I come to Ananda, and this is another way, by their fruits. Look at their followers. Look at the people around them. About a year after I came to Ananda, there was a bunch of people who'd come at the same time I was, and they were disenchanted, and they were leaving, and they had a long list of the things that were wrong with Ananda, this, that, and the other thing. And so, I said, well, are they right? I was thinking to myself. And one of the things I thought was, I just looked at them, their energy, what they were putting out, and then I looked at those people who were the most central part of Ananda, and what my relationship to them was, and what kind of energy they had, and what kind of integrity they had. Boy, that settled it in a hurry. I want to be like those folks. They may have their grievances, and I don't care if they're right or wrong. I don't want to be like that. I want to be like this people. This is the path I want to be on. So that's one way that helps us. The true guru really only wants what's best for us. There's no vestige of self-interest in it. When Master was early on, he'd only been about 6 months with Yukteswar, and he had this passion to go out to the Himalayas. And he asked him, and Yukteswar said, you're better off seeking God from a man of God realization than from the mountains. But Yogananda, I love this way, again, his way with words. He asked him again, and Yukteswar said nothing. And Yogananda took his silence for consent, and then he adds, a precarious interpretation readily accepted at one's convenience. Then he went through the whole ordeal of trying to find, what was it, Ram Gopal Mazumdar, the sleepless saint, being told go right, instead of go left, which is where he should have been. He went through this whole long ordeal where he was perpetually, only a crochet, only a couple of miles from his destination forever, it seemed. He finally got back to Yukteswar. He found the saint, and the saint told him, you're not going to find it he told him the same thing. You're not going to find it in the Himalayas. You've got a God-realized master. You want to find God, that's where you should be looking. So much humbled, Yogananda came back to Yukteswar and apologized and threw himself at his feet and said, I must have disappointed you. And Yukteswar's response was, I do not expect anything from others, so their actions cannot be in opposition to wishes of mine. I would not use you for my own ends. I am happy only in your own true happiness. That's the whole reason the guru is there. He's there for our happiness. He has no other interest. There's nothing else there's no other gain for him. Master Yogananda put a fine point on it when Swami came to him. And Swami, immediately when Master said, do you give me your unconditional love? No problem, he said, yes. When he said, do you give me your unconditional obedience? He was, and he felt like he had to be completely honest. So he said, suppose sometime I think you're wrong. And Master understood him. Master wasn't quite as, Yukteswar handled it differently with Yogananda. He was a little stronger. I don't want your love stinks. Yogananda was a little gentler with Swami. He understood. He said, I will never ask anything of you that God does not tell me to ask. Swami could accept that and said he'd give him his unconditional obedience. And Yogananda continued saying, when I met my master, Sri Yukteswar, he said to me, allow me to discipline you. Why, sir? I inquired. Because, he replied, in the beginning of the spiritual path, one's will is guided by whims and fancies. Mine was too, Sri Yukteswar continued, until I met my guru, Lahiri Mahashai. It was only by attuning my haphazard will to his wisdom-guided will that I found true freedom. In the same way, if you attune your will to mine, you too will find freedom. To act only on the inspiration of whims and fancies is not freedom, but bondage. Only by doing God's will can you find what you are seeking. And that, of course, is by attuning yourself to the Guru. It's interesting that when Yukteswar gave Yogananda the experience of samadhi, shortly after that, Yogananda came to him and said, "Sir, when will I find God?" And Yukteswar said, "You found him." And Yogananda said, "Oh, no, sir, I don't think so." And Yukteswar's reply was, "Well, I'm sure you're not expecting some venerable personage decorating some antiseptic corner of the universe. But I see that you're equating God with some kind of spiritual powers. Spiritual advancement is not measured by one's outward powers, but only by the depth of his bliss in meditation. After the mind has been cleared by Kriya Yoga of sensory obstacles, meditation furnishes a twofold proof of God. One is the joy we feel, and the other, this is from Yukteswar, is his instant guidance, his adequate response to every difficulty. And Yogananda recognized that. I do realize now that I have found God. For whenever the joy of meditation has returned subconsciously during my active hours, I have been subtly directed to adopt the right course in everything, even the details. You know, that line from the poem Samadhi, it's one of those lines that intrigues me. The sparrow, each grain of sand, falls not without my sight. Each grain of sand, and you think of a walk along the beach, and you think, whoa, how can that be? What is that consciousness that is aware of every sparrow, every grain of sand, every thought we have? Davy tells a story of going for a walk, and it was one of those moments of feeling forlorn, of feeling separate from God, of feeling all alone in the universe. And in that moment, a sparrow dropped at her feet. It was Divine Mother hearing her every thought, saying, remember the poem? Every sparrow, every grain of sand, Divine Mother is the nearest of the near, the dearest of the dear. I'd like to read to you from Whispers from Eternity. This is the poem that precedes the poem Samadhi, and the experience that Yogananda describes here can be ours. It's called I Am Here. Alone I roamed by the ocean shore and watched the wrestling waves in brawling roar, bounding with thine own restless life. I saw thee in thy angry mood, tossing and foaming until the very vastness of thy wrath made me shiver and turn away in dread from so much violence and strife. And then I walked inland. A kindly spreading sentinel tree waved friendly arms to comfort me, consoling me with gentler looks sublime. Its leaves and branches swayed in tender lullaby rhyme, conveying a message that I knew was thine. Above me, high, I saw the gaugeless mystic sky, and childlike in dim valleys I sought to pry out thy secrets and to play with thee. In vain, alas, did I seek thee hiding there. Cloud-robed, foam-sprayed, leaf-garlanded, too elusive for mortal eyes to see or ears to hear. And yet I knew that thou wert always near, as if playing hide and seek with me, receding each time I almost touched thee. I groped for thee in the maddeningly complex folds of dark ignorance, as old as time itself is old. At last I ceased my search, almost in despair. What hope had I of finding thee, thou royal, sly eluder? Thou art, I know, everywhere, yet thou seemest nowhere, lost in unplumbed space where none may grasp thee, where none may clasp thee or behold thy face. Yes, despairing, I ceased my fruitless search, turned huffily away from thee. My ploy was unsuccessful. Still no answer from the wrathful sea, and only whispers from the friendly tree. Naught but silence from the limitless blue sky. Silence from valleys low and mountains high. Like a hurt child, within the depths of me, I hid and sulked, no longer seeking thee. And then lo, suddenly unheralded and unseen hand snatched from my eyes that all-black band which had blinded me so long with fold on fold. No longer weary, but filled with strength untold, I stood and gazed again. A laughing sea instead of wrathful roars. A gay, glad world with mystically opening doors. With only mists of dreams between, someone beside me stood, unseen, and whispered to me, calm and clear, "Hello, playmate, I am here."
I was caught up in ecstasy. 'Twas a day sanctified by God. There he showed me the truths of heaven, truths which all seeking him should know. How the soul made to live in freedom can reclaim its eternal right. How the night born of our delusions can be fired, blazing with his light.